I'm often asked, how do you play a little more linear on the bass side of the instrument, especially considering it's tuned in fifths, which does make it a little more problematic, a little harder. If I were to play a C major scale in a linear pattern, meaning in one position, it would look like this, which is not a bad exercise in the first place. So I'll just play the note C. I would start on here on C and do this. Same on the next string. Same on the next string. Okay, so that's kind of an obvious, that's where the notes are. But most of my playing, I don't really play that way. I do a little bit, but what I tend to like to do is play in groups of threes. So if I'm playing a groove of some kind of a chord here, I might play three notes and slide up. Now what I mean by groups of threes is this. Now my hand is in position for these three, and then I do jump for one note, that's that one. But I don't try to play that note, I go. I tend to do that a lot. So an example of watching is this. And then if I want to reach back to the root, I just slide it back down. So I can play 6 notes in a row, meaning that are like whole step or a half step, that's what I mean by that, consecutively, pretty easy. So I do use that phrasing a lot. And then I might bring that finger in and play these 6 notes like that. So I find this not too difficult. I find that harder to do. So I tend to phrase a lot. See what I'm playing, like those 3 notes, then these 3 notes, then pull off, then those 3 down here, reach down to that one. So I like to play sort of in those groups of threes, and it keeps my hand positioned where I'm not having to try to figure out how to reach, or I'm not hopping too much because I'm moving my arm and the fingers are coming off the strings a little too much. So I'll just demonstrate a little of that. Say I have a chord. So that's, and I might even ignore the 4th note a little bit. If you do it too much, it starts to sound jumpy, but you know, what I mean by ignoring the 4th note is that I'm not playing that one. And then reach over, get more linear, maybe ignore that note. Like that. Okay, you can do the same thing with a pentatonic pattern. So for example, here's just a straight pentatonic. It's actually a little easier than the diatonic. But again, you can play in groups on that as well. So I might play these 4. Now here's your pentatonic scale straight ahead, skipping these notes. Now you notice that the notes, the intervals are leaping. Also you may notice that the shape of the scale pattern is exactly the same as the melody side, but the notes are inverted. So here's your pentatonic. The same thing's true for a major scale. If you remember from the lesson where you have 3 wide stretches, like here's the note C. Say I want to play a C major scale, here's 3 wide stretches. The next string, back to a wide stretch, then below it is this. So that's all the notes in the C major scale in the same universal pattern as I did in the right hand where I was playing it across in strings tuned in 4ths. So you can discover those patterns as well. Pretty simple. Now what I do in the pentatonic is I tend to reach up for these notes occasionally, like then I might, instead of reaching down there, play that note. That's a nice little phrase. So I do a lot of kind of moving around. I also discovered that these 2 strings, you can lay your fingers down, and this are really nice little groupings because it covers all 3. that's a nice little grouping or phrasing. Then you go to the next one, and that's where you have your bigger lead. So those are a little easier. So you're going to discover little fingering positions, places you don't have to move your hand around too much, and you can become a little more linear. So here's an example of that. Kind of like this. It's that riff on the same fingering but inverted. So that gives you a nice. So that'll give you some ideas of sounding a little bit and playing a little more linear without the struggles of actually having to play up and down in fourths. And I find it's really nice because I can combine that, like I did a little bit earlier, with the natural stick type of a phrasing with a linear. I really like to mix those together, you know. Type of a thing, because these, I call them stick because it's tuned in fifths, and it's a very popular kind of a phrasing to go across like that. Good combination like that gives you some other ways you can get a variety of sounds.